believe this guy is so powerful, he can't go to prison. He's going to beat this. So I can't speak for that ward because I didn't vote in that ward, but I think that there's a lot of that. There's a lot of, this guy has always been here for us. He's used his power to help our community. We're going to stick with him no matter what. And the other thing is that in Chicago, more than probably any other city, because of our political structure, because of our neighborhoods, the fact that we're so diverse, but yet our neighborhoods are so insular, it's all about taking care of business. It's all about taking care of those potholes and getting that garbage picked up and making sure those streets are clean. And Ed Burke was very effective at doing that. And in the end, that's what matters to voters most.
Especially his own street, right?
Yeah, especially his own street. The cleanest, there's never a spot of ice or snow on that street, no matter how severe the Chicago winter is.
So do you think that Toni Preckwinkle has to overcome her associations with Ed Burke in order to win in April? Is this a big thing she needs to overcome?
I don't know the answer to that, but if that's the case, she's done, because she's not going to be able to overcome that. It's been embedded in the public's consciousness. Lori Lightfoot is running commercials about it all the time. She has a relationship with him. She's the head of the Cook County Democratic Party, which Ed Burke was always a very powerful member of. She's got to live with that, but I think she should be stressing her progressive record, her progressive history, the fact that she was an alderman for 20 years and that she was among the most outspoken and independent aldermen in the city council. That's what she should be talking about. She can't change the Ed Burke story.
So moving towards, your profession as a journalist, we wanted to ask, what is the role of the press in Chicago politics, and how, if at all, does it differ from the role of the press in informing voters about national politics? Do you feel that journalism in Chicago is given any more credit than elsewhere in the country?
I think we have an incredibly rich and vibrant culture of watchdog journalism in Chicago. We have investigative reporting at a time when investigative reporting is challenged because of the costs and because of the severe competition from the digital environment. We are thriving here. We've got probably a dozen nonprofit journalism outfits to do watchdog reporting, not to mention all the mainstream legacy news organizations. So there's a lot of good reporting on politics. We love our politics, so the media eats it up just in terms of the day-to-day stuff, but we also are very good at aggressively reporting on corruption, on government misconduct, on keeping the politicians honest. And I think that the fourth estate is the fourth estate or third estate? It's the fourth estate, right? The fourth estate is alive and well in Chicago in a way that it's not in too many other parts of the country. We're not inside the Beltway. We're in the Midwest. We have a lot of common sense in terms of the way we look at our journalism and what matters to regular folks. And I think it shows. You don't have a lot of this, in New York, on the East Coast, you've got all the, I think, left and right leaning talk shows, the CNNs and the MSNBCs and the Foxes that really are not. They're more opinion-based and they're more personality-based and they're more ideologically based. In Chicago, it's more just the bread and butter of, what's really going on in our city and who should be responsible for the problems and challenges of our city. And the fact that we have a national profile because we've got Rahm Emanuel here, because we've had Trump beating up on us, I think that gives us a lot more stature and gives us a lot more license to be powerful voices in the media.
Not to mention some guy who was president before who came from here, right?
Let's not forget our old Hyde Park friend, Barack Obama. Yeah. Although Barack Obama didn't put us on the map. The reason the reason Barack Obama came here was because we were already on the political map. And this was a very fertile, rich place for him to blossom from.
Yeah, he knew this was a place where he could launch a long-term career.
Absolutely. And he did a pretty good job of it.
So are you optimistic, and I get a sense that you are from our conversation so far, but are you optimistic about Chicago's future given the current and upcoming challenges the city faces? And will the new mayor and city council really be able to start a new chapter in this city?
I certainly hope so, because there's no city that's more challenged right now than Chicago. What I'm most concerned about is about the population loss, about the folks that are leaving the city in droves, and many of those people are people of color, particularly African Americans. And I think that that's got to be curtailed. I think that what either Lori Lightfoot or Toni Preckwinkle could do is inspire people to give Chicago another chance, to hold off, to hang in there in a way that probably no other candidate that ran in this race could do that, and give us some time. It's going to take time, and it's going to take people pulling together. And I think that both of these candidates ran very much a people-oriented we're all in this together. This is about our neighborhoods. This is about bringing people together and making sure people are not left out of the conversation. And I think that's a really great basis to start turning the city around from.
I think that given all the challenges the city's facing and future challenges, I think that it feels like the next mayor is going to have to make some very difficult decisions and maybe unpopular decisions. Do you get the sense that one of those candidates might be better suited to, make these very difficult calls, especially when it comes to something like solving the pension debt crisis?
I think that both of these women are tough and savvy and willing to make tough decisions and make tough calls that people are not going to like. I think Toni Preckwinkle is more experienced in terms of having hands-on experience. She's run major government institutions. She's solved big problems. So of the two of them, I would say that she's probably, on paper at least, looks to be a much more capable, prepared manager. But Lori Lightfoot understands government, particularly from the policing and criminal justice side, and so she's not a piker. I think that one of the biggest difficult decisions that's going to have to be made is around where the revenues come from, where we find the money. And this is going to have to come down to raising taxes. And I think both these women plan to raise taxes. They're not going to tell you that right now, but they're going to have to do that. And it's not just going to be the sin taxes, the nuisance taxes. It's probably going to be the big ones like property taxes. So be prepared for that. But, they're smart enough to realize that if people believe in them as leaders and believe that they can solve the problems, they're willing to give up a little bit more money to get there. And I think that's one of the reasons why the business community has been kind of reluctant to step forward in this round in terms of endorsing either one of them for the most part, because they see the money coming down the road, and it's coming from corporations, and it's coming from individuals, and it's coming in the form of taxes.
So we'd like to turn, for the second to last section of this interview, we'd like to ask just a little bit about your experience as a fellow here at the Institute of Politics. So for our listeners, can you first tell us what the Institute of Politics is?
Boy, well, I'm not the best person to define that because that's David Axelrod's job, but it is a institution on campus that provides a space for students. It's very student-focused to come and learn about public policy, politics, government, but not just learn, but engage with, folks from all over the country, the fellows and other speakers that come in who bring expertise, bring ideas. And I think the thing I find so exciting about it is so student-focused, and it's about giving space to the students to learn from the fellows, to learn from the other speakers and professionals to come here, and to give back, and to begin to build their own vision about what public policy means to them from people who are actually doing the work. I found it very rewarding that I'm sort of getting overwhelmed with students who want to talk to me about all kinds of things, from everything from not just my expertise around politics, but police accountability and healthcare and social justice issues and the economy. And there's some really exciting, capable students on this campus that are doing great things, and so I've been thrilled to be part of that.
So can you tell us a little bit more about what your role as a fellow at the IOP this quarter entailed, besides meeting with students? Right.
Well, meeting with students was a big part of it. My office hours were always packed. Students would come in to talk about everything from journalism careers to how to do a good investigative story, to healthcare policy, to economic development, and just to come in and get advice. Or they just want to just talk about the 2020 election and who's going to run and who's going to beat Trump. Everything. But in addition to that, I spent time leading off-the-record seminars with almost all of the mayoral candidates, which was a fascinating, upfront, and personal way for the students to engage with the candidates in an environment where it was just them and the candidate. And believe me, candidates are different when they're in front of students than they are when they're on TV or when they're out on the campaign trail. They're a little bit more honest and a little bit more vulnerable in a way that teaches you some things about them that you might not have known otherwise. So that was a real eye-opener for me.
What was it like for you to have that opportunity to sit down with those candidates? And do you think you learned anything about the race and the candidates from that opportunity to lead those seminars?
Well, one thing I learned was that young people have a real powerful lure with the candidates. contrary to, there was a little bit, I think, of disappointment in terms of the election results, because it looked like the millennials didn't turn out in the large numbers as they did in the last election. But I think that the candidates are very aware of the importance and power of the millennial vote and support. So they were all running here. Almost all of them ran here to engage with the students. I think that as I said before, I think that the candidates were a little bit more humble and thoughtful in terms of how they related to the students. They talked more about specific public policy positions that they had rather than personality and corruption and all the things that they like to do when they're on the campaign trail. So hopefully the students helped draw some of that out, because they asked some really tough questions. They weren't asking about Ed Burke and corruption. They were asking about, what are you going to do about the pension crisis, and what are you going to do about economic development and the bread and butter issues that we should be talking about in this campaign.
Absolutely. So to me, the Institute of Politics is a really great way for students on the campus of the University of Chicago to learn more about politics, not only nationally, but also very specific to Chicago. Folks like yourself bring expertise here that is shared with students. Do you think the Institute of Politics also serves the broader community as a way for Chicagoans to access the expertise of the university? Does it work both ways?
Of course, because some of the events are open to the public, and I think it's primarily, my sense is that most of the folks that come are coming from the South Side, not necessarily just Hyde Park, but they're coming from the South Side of Chicago, and I think that's crucial because many of the folks on the South Side of Chicago don't have access to up close and personal expertise like you're going to see if you come to one of the IOP events or some of the other events you see on campus. So I think that's really important. What I saw was the students were very, and this maybe is a little bit off what you're talking about, but it seems like there was a lot of encouragement of students to get involved in very local elections, the aldermanic elections. I was talking a lot to students about that, and some of them were working in campaigns. Some of them were student journalists who were covering the campaigns. And I think that's crucial because so many of us as voters, young people and beyond, don't think about how important these local races are. We're looking at 2020 and Trump, and we're forgetting that most of the decisions that get made that are by politicians that are going to affect your lives are happening on the very local ground level in the wards, in the legislative districts, and that we need to be really focused on that.
And just going off of that, to wrap up, so this election has been, I think it's definitely piqued the interest of a lot of Chicagoans and young people, especially those who are, students who come to the Institute of Politics for your events. But the election will come and go. What should Chicagoans be focused on in the future? What should we be looking out for in terms of keeping the mayor and the city council accountable? Just because I feel like with an election, people suddenly become interested in local politics, but then once the election is over, it becomes a little bit harder to kind of stay involved with the day-to-day goings-on of city council and the mayor's office. So what do you want to leave our listeners and Chicagoans with in terms of just what they should be looking out for? Why should they stay focused on these kinds of issues?
Because they got to keep the politicians honest. They're going to break your promises. There's some lying going on during this campaign, and that's going to continue. So I think we have to be assertive about holding our elected officials accountable. And that's not just by going down to City Hall to march or complaining. That's about getting involved and getting engaged in some community or political activity. Maybe it's volunteering at your local neighborhood community center. Maybe it's working for another candidate that's coming down the road, but doing, pledging on the day after the election that you're going to do one thing that you haven't done before as a voter to stay involved and be engaged. And whether it's directly connected to the election that we just had or not, it will make a huge difference. The more people are engaged and the more folks that are paying attention, the better our politicians will be and respond to us.
Laura Washington, thank you so much. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with some Chicago hot takes.
Hey, UC3P listeners. I'm Thomas.
And I'm Nick.
In the United States, public faith in the military remains sky high, while trust in other government institutions sinks to an all-time low.
At the same time, fewer than 1% of Americans will ever serve in the armed forces, and the cultural divide between active duty troops and the civilian population continues to widen.
UC3P presents a new series, Thank You for Your Service, where we take a